We all know the headlines. A major American city facing federal threats of intervention. But this isn't a foreign policy crisis. This is New York City. The mayor's office and city council have sent a blistering, unified message directly to President Donald Trump. Keep your federal teams and military forces out of NYC. They aren't asking for help. They are actively rejecting it, arguing that this type of federal assistance is not a public safety solution, but a political weapon that will inevitably lead to fear, chaos, and a complete breakdown of trust. This high-stakes municipal standoff is about more than just a few soldiers on a street corner. It's a battle for sovereignty, for the soul of the city's diverse communities, and for the very definition of local public safety in the United States. New York leaders say federal militarization has already proven to be a destabilizing force in other cities, and they are drawing a line in the sand to protect their residents from what they call an unlawful occupation. The unwelcome intervention. The core of this unprecedented political friction stems from repeated threats by the former president to deploy federal law enforcement or National Guard troops into major, Democratic-led cities, often characterizing them as crime-ridden and incapable of governing themselves. The city council and a coalition of faith leaders and advocates recently held a press conference to officially and unequivocally reject this prospect. Their message is clear. New York City does not need, nor will it welcome, a federal takeover of its policing functions. This isn't a plea for less attention. It's a fierce defense of the city's own, proven strategy for public safety, championed by Mayor Eric Adams, who has repeatedly stated, New York City is the safest big city in America and home to the best police force in the world. This opposition is rooted in a history of federal actions that, instead of ensuring peace, have escalated tensions and undermined civil liberties in places like Portland and Los Angeles. The consensus from City Hall is that the deployment is not just unnecessary, but counterproductive. The argument is multifaceted, blending legal challenges, practical policing concerns, and deeply felt community anxieties. New York City Corporation Counsel Muriel Goodtrufant and others have been active in legal battles, filing amicus briefs supporting cases against the federal government's deployment in other states, arguing that the federal government is overreaching its authority. They assert that the Insurrection Act, the primary statutory tool for deploying military forces domestically, cannot be lawfully invoked because there is no genuine rebellion or invasion in New York City. The federal government, they contend, is attempting to create an extra-constitutional national police force guided by political, not legal, aims. The real threat, undermining community trust. The most potent argument leveraged by the NYC leaders is the damage that federal teams will inflict on the foundational principle of local policing, community trust. Councilmember Sandra Ung highlighted this, stating, real public safety comes from trust, not from force or fear. In New York's diverse, immigrant-rich neighborhoods, the presence of unidentified or militarized federal agents, especially those focused on immigration enforcement, creates an immediate, chilling effect. Councilmember Farah N. Lewis pointed out that such a heavy-handed federal presence puts the city's immigrant neighbors at risk, undermining the very democracy the troops would ostensibly be protecting. The history of federal IC and CBP actions in the city, often involving tactics described as military style, has already eroded the fragile trust between local law enforcement and vulnerable communities. When residents fear that reporting a crime could lead to their own detention or deportation, the entire public safety apparatus collapses. Councilmember Jennifer Gutierrez voiced the fear succinctly, warning, we've seen what happens when federal forces descend on cities, violence, fear, and chaos. The city council's majority leader, Amanda Farias, was equally critical, stating, federal militarization is not public safety. Deploying military forces into our neighborhoods undermines the progress we continue to build through accountability, housing, behavioral health care, and harm reduction. The city's leaders argue their strategy for long-term safety is built on precision policing, social services, and community engagement, a model that is diametrically opposed to the aggressive, confrontational, and largely untrained for policing approach of Federal Border Patrol or military unit. The political weaponization of public safety. Beyond the safety and legal arguments, the message from NYC is that the threatened deployment is pure political theater. The former president has been transparent in targeting cities run by his political opponents. framing the issue as a war from within against the radical left. Council member Eric Dinowitz condemned this as a dangerous attempt to intimidate and divide our city and a deeply irresponsible effort to weaponize law enforcement for political gain. The deployment, they argue, is not a response to an actual public safety crisis, but a manufactured one intended to portray democratic governance as ineffective. Council Speaker Adrian Adams summarized the economic and social toll, noting that federal actions like the recent arrest of street vendors have already weakened local communities and their small business partners. The fear is that a large-scale federal presence would further depress tourism and stifle the city's economy, compounding damage already done by the cuts and federal aggression lawmakers have highlighted. The leaders are not just fighting for safety. They are fighting for the economic and constitutional integrity of their CI. Tie, a battle for sovereignty and the future of policing. The NYC leaders stand against the potential deployment is, at its heart, a modern battle for federalism. The principle that power should be distributed between the federal and state/local governments. They are asserting their sovereign right in the competence of the NYPD to manage their own domestic affairs. The city is essentially telling the federal government that using combat-trained soldiers or immigration agents to perform general domestic policing is a violation of the Posse Comitatus Act, which generally prohibits the use of the military for domestic law enforcement, and that this is a dangerous step toward authoritarianism. The message is a clear rejection of the idea that cities are mere training grounds for military forces, as suggested by some federal officials. The resolve from the city council is firm. We will not be bullied, and we will never allow fear-mongering to dictate how we live or how we govern in our city. This unified voice, backed by a coalition of local activists and faith leaders, transforms the issue from a local public safety debate into a national challenge to the limits of presidential power and the essential democratic principle of local control. It serves as a warning to all American cities that the defense of civil liberties and community trust must be fiercely guarded against any overreach, no matter the political pretext.